Hi guys, today the webinar that I am going to be presenting is Wave2Vec 2.0. So this is one of the state-of-the-art models in audio systems, and it is based on transformer models. We will be seeing what is Wave2Vec and why there is a 2.0 version of it, and how it is different than the previous architectures, what is its model architecture, and the data set it is being trained on, and we will also be seeing a code demo of how to use this Wave2Vec 2.0. So first, what is Wave2Vec? So, Wave2Vec is an algorithm that uses raw unlabeled data to train the automatic speech recognition. So, we with the advancement of the transformer model, we are more and more venturing into a unsupervised learning, and there has been several advancements in the field of NLP and audio in this space. And Wave2Vec is one such thing in the audio platforms that tries to emulate the success of the NLP and computer vision ideas. So what it uses is it uses raw unlabeled data to do the training on a transformer based model. So it doesn't have any labeled transcriptions. So the task that we are trying to achieve is a automatic speech recognition. So we tell the words, it automatically understands what are the words. So this is a self-supervised approach, and it beats the traditional automatic speech recognition systems. So the previous automatic speech recognition systems, it beats that with a 22% accuracy improvement. So from that 22% uh, accuracy improvement. So what we are trying to do with the metric is we are trying to find the error rate. How much is the error rate in the previous state-of-the-art models, and what is the error rate in this particular model? And we see a significant improvement in accuracy over models like deep speech too. And another important thing is, even though the accuracy has increased, it's also good that we have used only several orders of magnitude less labeled data. So we are using less labeled data with getting a high accuracy in these models. So that's why Wave2Vec has proven to be a very effective model. And again, this is a self-supervised model, so there is no need for manually annotated data for developing this system. And this is important, especially in languages other than English, because English we may have several thousand hours of transcribed data, but the same thing can't be told about other languages. So we need a system that could work well for all the languages for the audio speech recognition. So that this takes care of. So takes care of the non-English languages too, and it works with very limited existing training data. So this is about the Wave2Vec model. So Wave2Vec, how does it work as algorithm? So what it does is it takes the original speech samples, and it does a masking in those speech samples. So if we consider the transformers uh, with respect to NLP, what we have is we have a sentence. We have a sentence that is being fed to the decoder, and some parts of the sentence will be masked, and that should be found by the transformer decoder. So that is the main idea in NLP. Similarly, in audio systems, what we do is we mask some parts of the audio, and we try to find what these parts of the audio are. So that's how we try to find. Uh, we try to learn in this model, and so we pick original speech examples and modified versions. These modified versions will have masked audio parts, and repeating this task hundreds of times to identify what these specific parts of the audio are. So that's how we make the model learn. So what is the primary architecture of a way to work looks like? First thing is like give a audio. It works with multi-layer convolutional networks. So it has two multi-layer convolution neural networks, which is stacked on top of each other. So convolution neural networks looks very similar to the ones that is being used in CNN. Or the only difference is there it's a 2D CNN. Here it's a 1D CNN. So there's a multi-layer CNN network that uh, maps this raw audio input to a representation. So, and where each vector is about 30 milliseconds of speech. So, what happens is, so when we give a audio input, these have been uh, converted into small chunks of audio, which is of 30 millisecond long, and these are being used to generate its own representation, which cover a large span of each second. So, this model uses a self-supervised task. So once we have this convolution and neural network and convert this into vectors, from that vectors we try to map these vectors to uh, tokenizers. Let's say letters. If we are mapping in a, let's say in the English language, it will map to the alphabets, and also if there is a full stop or a space, so those things will also be mapped. So that's how it works as a self-supervised prediction task. So if we give a 10-second audio clip, what the wave to wake does is it generates a number of distractor examples. So we have this 10-second audio clip. This is being sent into the CNN model. We get some vectors for each of the tiny audio snippets. Some of these audio snippets are masked, and we try to find what is the correct audio at those spaces. And that's what here is. The model must determine which version is correct. So that's what our final objective is. And once we learn that, the way to work automatically understands how our speech is structured, and we can be using this for our automatic speech recognition systems. Guys, if you have any doubt, please do ask. The next is why there is a version 2.0. So this particular way to work is a model that has been released by Facebook, and they also released a 2.0 version of this, and they have released in 2020 actually. So why there is an updated version is, so the previous models what it did is it built a end-to-end system where a deep neural network will try to uh, find what are the words directly from the audio or the MFCC. So here what it does is directly from the audio we are trying to predict the words. Such thing like such thing that is based on let's say for the previous examples there's instead of a transformer, the previous state of the models was composed of RNN or LSTM models. So either if you have something like RNT or wave to work, what it does is it directly tries to find what is the word for the given raw audio input. The problem with this is we need a lot more training data and a lot more computation resources for the training. So what this upgraded version was trying to find is to what now we are doing is we are trying to assign some speech units for each of this raw audio signals. So model is being trying to predict the correct speech unit for the masked parts of the audio. While at the same time it's learning what is the speech units for the whole given video. So what it does is instead of having this raw audio input and directly finding the words. What we now we do is we have this raw audio input, we convert that into specialized speech units that we learn through the model, and with these speech units we try to find what is the words in from the model. So this has proved to be effective than the previous versions, and this requires much less data and much less computation resources. That's why there is a 2.0 version of this particular model. And here, what they have told is, so what they do is they use their self-supervised learning. So what they use it, they use some 53,000 hours of unlabeled speech and train this way to WIC 2.0. And they use only a labeled data of just 10 minutes. And with this, they achieve a model error rate of 8.6% on noisy speech. Noisy speech is like with other sounds, and 5.2% in clean speech where there is no disturbances. There's very clear speech, and this has been done on the dataset, a standard dataset called LibriSpeech. So this this particular metric of 8.6% error rate is the same thing as achieving it through 100 hours of annotated data. So why this model is helpful is, instead of having several hours of annotated data that we need to be creating, we just need to be having 10 minutes of the transcribed data, and with this we are able to achieve the same accuracy as the previously uh, best model that has achieved with 100 hours of data. So that's why this model is going to be effective.
So essentially, you are introducing your gaps, and you're trying to predict gaps in speech.
Yes.
Okay.
Masking it and trying to find it. So once we have a model, we fine tune the model with extra layers. So that is this 10 minutes of transcribed speech. So once we fine tune it, we will be having a model that could predict the words automatically. So, self-supervised learning, how it does it? So, similar to BERT and other transformer models, what this model is trying to do is to predict the speech units for masked parts of the video. So, in the video snippet that we give as input, we mask some portions, and our model should predict what this masked units are. So, so this basic speech units of 25 millisecond, these things are learned, which highly is useful in this model. So this model has been able to outperform the previous best semi-supervised model, even with 100x less uh, training data. So that's why this model is going to be effective. So what is the model architecture in this Wave2Vec 2.0? So the first thing is future encoder. So in the future encoder, what we do is the model first processes the raw waveform of the speech with a multi-layer convolutional neural network to get the latent representation of 25 millisecond each. So what we do is we give the audio input and we separate it into chunks of 25 millisecond audio snippets that we send into a one-dimensional convolutional neural network that has several layers of CNN layer stack. So that gives a encoded representation. So from that, we'll be able to get the features from the raw audio. And there is also the total stride of the encoder that determines the number of time steps which are input. So in the CNN, based on the stride, it will determine how many time steps that has been given to the input to the transcript. So once we have this future encoder, we have this vector representation for the audio snippets. Now the next thing what we do is the output of the future encoder. So we have this vectorized forms of this raw audio snippets. So that is being sent into a context network which follows. So this is being sent into a transformer model. So it has the transformer architecture. So here instead of this fixed positional embedding, so in NLP we use the fixed positional embedding. So this gives the absolute positional information about that. Let's take for example the alphabet. We use a convolutional layer, so that helps in knowing the relative positional embedding. So that particular part of the audio snippet, what is its relative position in the whole video, that we'll be able to know. So this output of the future encoder is being sent into the transformers, and parallelly this and this happens. Once we send this future encoder output to the transformers, the another thing that is happening is these representations are then fed into a quantizer as well. So quantizer, what it does is, for these uh, uh, future vectors, it chooses a speech unit for this latent audio representation from an inventory of learned units. So what we do is we give us a set of learnable speech units, and as the model trains with a lot more data, it understands what are the distinct speech units that it must be using, and finds these speech units. So once it learns on these speech units, it will be able to use this inventory of learned units to predict for each of the latent audio representation what is the speech unit to be used. So this quantization model is what makes the 2.0 different from the previous architectures. And what happens is we have some of the audio representations being masked actually before being fed into the transformer. And the transformer, so the transformer has this self-attention head, so it will have the information about the whole audio sequence. With the help of that, we will be able to find what is the masked part of the audio. And the output of the transformer is used to solve a contrast to task. So I will explain more about the contrast with task in the upcoming slide. So what is this task is, it needs to find the correct, requires the model to identify the correct quantized speech units. So in the quantized model, we are learning what is the speech units. So after the transformer, for the masked parts of the audio, what is the actual speech units we need to be finding, and we need to be finding those masked speech units and comparing it with the actual speech units, and based on the contrast to loss, we'll be updating our model, and once the model has fully learned, it will be automatically able to find the speech units for the masked parts of the audio. So what I have told in the previous slides, so here as a model architecture, we have this. So the framework is, it learns the contextualized speech representation and an inventory of speech units. So it learns both the speech representation that has been learned in the previous models. The difference here is it learns the inventory of discrete speech units. So that's what is very different with respect to this model. So what happens is we have this raw waveform. So this is a raw waveform, and what we have is with respect to the CNN models that is stacked on each other, we get this latent speech representations. So this is the latent speech representations, and this latent speech representations is sent parallelly to two parts. One is the transformers, and second is the quantizers. So the quantizers must find the speech units for these latent speech representations. And in the transformers, what happens is we mask some of the parts of the videos and we get the output. And with this output, we need to be finding what is the speech representation for each of the transformer output. So we have the actual speech representation, we have the output of the uh, speech representation that has been found. Based on these, we find the contrastive loss and we update the weights of the neural network so that once the model gets learned, the masked parts of the audio is also being learned. So that's how the model architecture of this particular model works. So training the model. So how do we train the model? So for training the model, we essentially need to solve the contrastive task, which is identifying the true quantized speech representation for the masked time step. So we have this masked time step. For that, what is the true representation we need to be finding? For that, we need to be doing this contrast to loss. This is the contrast to loss. And there is a diversity loss. So here we have a loss which is a combination of contrast to loss and diversity loss. The contrast to loss, so diversity loss, what it is, I will tell in the upcoming slides so that it's even more clearer. Contrast to loss, I will tell here. So contrast to loss, what happens is like it's a standard contrast to loss formula where we have try to find the similarity between the actual speech unit that has been found by the quantizer and the speech unit that has been found by the transformer output. So we find the similarity of the CT and the QT and the exponential of that by the summation of the exponential of all the speech units.
Sorry, what is CT and QT again?
So here, okay, I'll tell here.
No, this is a softmax formula. That much I can see.
Right? Yes.
It's a softmax formula for predicting the probability of the correct unit.
Yeah.
So which one is the correct unit? CT is the correct one or QT?
QT is the correct one.
Okay, and CT is the obscured one or predicted one. Okay.
Right.
So this is a y comma y dash softmax formula, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
So what we have is the CT is the output from the transformer model. QT is the speech unit that is learned by the quantization model. So what happens is in this model, let's take for example a particular example, audio snippet where there is a mask. So let's take for example there is a snippet in which there is a masking happening. So there will be several masking happening. And for this particular thing, what is the actual masking? So what we do is, there are three maskings that is happening. So for these three things, there will be a Q1, Q2, Q3. So this thing will be learned by the quantization module. And also this same way, after the transformer output, we will be having this C1, C2 and C3. So what happens here is we need to be finding what is the this particular snippet, what is the actual speech unit is what we need to be finding. So how do we find it is like contrast to loss. So what we do is this similarity of Q1 C1. So because we know this is the actual thing, and we also know in the denominator what are the other speech units that we have given. So that is Q1 C2, Q1 C3. So with that we'll be able to find the similarity of that, the exponential. So this is pretty much like a softmax function with a temperature component. So that into minus log of this whole softmax function will give the contrast to loss. With this contrast to loss, we will be able to find whether our representation that has been found by the transformer is in sync with the quantizer speech unit. If not, it will that loss will be propagated and corrections will be made so that this C1 and Q1 are very similar. So that's what is happening in the contrast loss. So diversity loss I will tell in the upcoming slides why there is a diversity loss in the total loss.
So BERT also uses masking technique, right, to do
Yes,
prediction.
yeah.
Okay.
So in the previous slide, I showed two laws actually. One is the contrast loss, and another is the diversity loss. And that's also a Gumbel softmax. So I'll explain what is the Gumbel softmax here. So these three are the important mathematical things that we need to be understanding here. So what is the Gumbel softmax is? So what we have this speech units that is to be learned. So for that, what we do is we have this G code books. So there are several code books. Let's take for example, there is G is equal to 3. Let's take for example, G is equal to 3. So it means that there is 3 code books and groups with V entries. Let's take for example, there is 5 entries. So there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 5. So there will be each thing will be having 5 entries. So that is the V entries. So what we need to be finding for that latent audio representation is we need to be finding uh, entry from each of the code book. So let's take for example, I chose this entry, and this entry. So this is like so let's take for example, this thing is V1. Uh, okay, this is let's G1, G2, G3. So this is V12, V24, and V32. So let's take for example that these three entries are being taken. And what we do is we apply a linear transformation to change these things into a Q1, into a Q. So what we do is we apply a linear transformation to obtain Q.
Sorry, I didn't get it actually. What is this?
So what we do is we need to be learning this speech units for each thing, right?
Hmm.
So for that, what they are trying to do is they are trying to have this code books. These are arbitrary code books. So we need to specify the number of code books and the number of entries. So a code book will have several entries. Let's take for example, there are 3 code books. So these are 3 code books, and there is 5 entries. So each code book will have 5 entries. So all these entries are to be learned by the model. So what it will do is, let's take for example, we have this audio. There is a audio snippet. For this particular audio snippet, we need to be we will be the quantization model. What it will do is it will choose the entry from the first code book, the second code book, and the third code book, and apply a concatenate these three vectors and apply a linear transformation to get the quantization model speech unit this Q. Uh, Understood, Lee?
Not exactly. I got some idea that it is taking 3 results and averaging them, or what?
It concatenates them. So it concatenates the resulting vectors and apply a linear transformation to find the actual Q.
So codebooks are possible solutions to that missing speech unit.
Yes, yeah.
And it is picking from multiple sets of such possible solutions. It is picking 3 randomly.
It finds that through a distribution. So how the distribution, I will tell you. So in the next slide. So once it selects those 3 vectors, it concatenates and applies a linear transformation to get the quantization vector.
What is this LGB NV in the formula?
So LGB, so this is the logic, okay, the Gumbel softmax function. So Okay, so why there is a Google softmax function is it enables choosing discrete codebook entries in a fully differentiable way. So in this paper, why do we use a Google softmax function is what essentially how we need to be finding this codebook entries is through a argmax function. So it needs to be finding through your argmax function what is the entry to be chosen from here, and from here. So the problem with the argmax function is uh, this can't be fully differentiable in a neural network. So if you use the argmax function somewhere in your neural network, you can't be using a back propagation because
Hmm.
argmax can't be fully differentiated.
Right.
So what we do is we work around with a trick where we convert this argmax into a softmax.
Okay, got it.
So this softmax is what I'll come to this formula again. Like I'll just explain here. So the sampling process of discrete data from a categorical distribution. So this is what we need to be doing for choosing the codebook entries. Discrete data from a categorical distribution. So that is what we need to be doing. But the problem is it's not differentiable. So if it's not differentiable, we can't be doing the back propagation. So what this Gumbel softmax distribution it does is it approximates the samples from the categorical distribution. So it kind of approximates this and converts the argmax into softmax, and this makes it works with back propagation. So that's why we are using a Gumbel softmax distribution. So in this Gumbel softmax distribution, we this PGV is G is the codebook to be chosen, and B is the entry. So in which codebook, which entry to choose. So that's what this PGB is. So what we do is we do a softmax of it. For this softmax, what we do is we so here this particular thing is called Gumbel noise. The Gumbel noise is here. If you see in the bottom, there is a log of that, and in that they use the uniform sample that has been sampled from U0, 1. So this is the Gumbel noise, and LGV is the logits that we get. So the logits, how do we get this? For that particular entry, we send it to the, so we have this particular audio snippet, we send it to a neural network, we get the logics for each of this entry. So that is this LGV. So in this way, we'll be able to find what is the entry to be chosen. So the Gumbel softmax is a kind of a little difficult mathematical concept. The basic idea is instead of using argmax, we use a softmax. This softmax, how do we find this? Through this Gumbel softmax distribution.
Is N here, NV and NK?
So this is some noise that we add to the,
Oh, so L is the logits after passing through a neural network,
yeah.
and N is the noise. Okay, T is temperature.
The next concept is, as we have already discussed, the contrast loss. So this is the main loss that we need to be focusing on. So what we do is, so we have this context network output CT centered around the mass time step. The model needs to, so this is the output from the transformer model. The model needs to find the two quantized latent speech for this. From a k plus 1 quantize the candidate representation. So what we do is, let's take for example, we have this audio snippet, we have this 5 masked audio units. So these are the different distractors that is being used. So in this, if there is phi masking that is happening, so here this is the actual representation there. So this is one. So these are the distractors. There are 4 distractors. So that is the k plus 1 representations. The k is the distractors. This is the actual unit. So the loss is defined as this, which we already discussed. The similarity between the actual speech unit and our output of the transformer, and other other matched outputs, and the uh, quantizer of our model. So with this, we will be able to find the contrastive loss for this. The next is the diversity loss. So diversity loss, what it does is, it's designed to increase the use of the quantized codebook representation. So what it essentially does is, suppose we have this. So in each codebook we have B entries. So what the diversity loss does is, it tries to maximize the use of each of these entries. So let's take, for example, there's 3 entries in this code book, and there's 3 entries in this code. And let's take, for example, most of our speech units are using this entry and this entry. So the diversity loss, what it does is, it maximizes the entropy of the softmax distribution over the codebook entries. What it does is, it maximizes this distribution loss. So once you calculate this diversity loss and back propagate this diversity loss, it will be knowing that it is using only 2 representations, and this will be back propagated, and we will be using more of the codebook entries. So there will be more diverse speech entries that will be used, and this could help in finding discrete speech units that will be used for the data that we are using.
Sorry, can you repeat this slide? I missed it.
Yeah.
Where this Gumball Softmax here, that PG?
No. So here, for the total loss of the network, we add 2 things. One is the before stage, the contrast loss. Second is diversity loss. Contrast loss we know because we map the audio input. For that, we are using this contrast loss. Diversity loss, why do we use this? So we need to be picking diverse speech units from the code books. So that is
Right.
our aim here. So if we keep on using the same speech unit, other speech units will not get learned, and there won't be very discrete speech units available. We'll just have 2 or 3 entries that is getting learned. So to minimize that, we use a diversity loss, in which we take this entropy factor. So we find the entropy of this code books and send it as a loss to the neural network, so that we know we use in subsequent epochs more different entries from the code books. So that's what the diversity loss.
Got it. So why is minus sign? So entropy, you want to minimize entropy, normally H, but with minus sign you want to maximize entropy.
Entropy, that I'm not sure actually, the negative sign, because here the
normally you minimize entropy loss, but here you are maximizing entropy loss. So you are increasing the degree of uncertainty.
Yeah. So it's kind of the opposite, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't need one particular thing to be concentrated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think this is similar to basically there are 2 losses, right? One is a contrastive loss, which is basically trying to sharpen it to one entry. The diversity loss will ensure it is in the other extreme, make it equal. So it's a trade-off.
Yes. So So in this formula, particularly Manohar, we are saying minus H.
Yeah,
So
basically what
H is entropy.
Huh.
We are normally you minimize entropy, but here we are maximizing entropy. So you are maximizing uncertainty. So you are increasing. Maybe that's the way to do increase the diversity by
correct.
maximizing
It's like
uncertainty.
exploration versus exploitation.
Correct.
The first one is doing exploitation. This diversity loss is doing exploration.
Exploration. Correct. Makes sense. Yes.
I think you recall. I think in a previous call also, Nikhil had presented
Yes. Similar
right?
concept. Yeah.
Centering
Similar.
and centering and sharpening, right?
Correct.
Centering is diversity loss, and sharpening is the Gumbel softmax, whatever was being used for getting a sharp thing. Yeah, that's the same concept, I think.
Yeah. Looks like correct.
Okay. So we have this contrast to and diversity loss, and then next another important concept that we use here is this connectionist temporal classification. So why do we use this is, so this is an algorithm that is being used for training the neural networks in speech recognition and handwriting recognition and other such sequence problems. So why do we use this particular CTC method is we need to get around not knowing the alignment between the input and the output. So we don't know the alignment between the input and output. So how do we work around with that? So for that, it uses a special blank token called epsilon. So I'll just quickly explain why we need to be using the CTC, because this audio could have a different sequence length. So let's take for example, the audio is of so audio could have, after having this vectorized form, it could have some sequences of 100, and this speech that we convert this into, so this is this audio representation, and this we convert into the speech which should have uh, 25. Let's take for example, there is a sentence with 25 alphabets. So don't know what is the alignment between this particular thing to this thing. So how do we do this alignment, and what is the challenges here? So let's take for example, uh, so we have this speech representations that is getting produced for each of these tiny snippets that is about some 25 milliseconds. So for each 25 milliseconds, we get this speech representation. So let's take for example this hello. This hello could have the speech representation. Let's take for example the hello that could have three speech representation that just denotes H, and there is a two representation that represents E, and there is four representations that represent L, and there is two representation that is representing O. So from these speech units, we have this, and let's take for example, we don't need to repeat the words that is getting repeated. So let's take for example, this is the output we got. From this, the actual output, if we, let's take for example, H, E, L, O. So this will be the output that we will be getting. So one of the problems is, let's take for example, here in the actual hello, there will be two L's. So if we use this concept, we just have one L. So to work out on this problem, what we need to be doing is we need to be introducing this new token called blank token. So with this blank token, how it will be is, so we have this, so with this blank token, it will look like this. So where we have this H repeated, E repeated. So we have this epsilon. So if we have this epsilon, what will happen is, so for the repeating words, it will automatically convert it into the single character. So when there is a epsilon, So we can distinguish between the repeating words. So there is two L's. So here there is two epsilons. So these things are converted into L, O. So in this way, we'll be able to get hello. So essentially, CTC is a way of working with not knowing the alignment between this input and output, which is a very common thing in audio speech recognition systems. I hope you guys understood. Any doubt, please to ask.
Yeah, I did not understand completely, but that's fine, I guess, sir.
So here, okay, the basic idea is, so we have this audio snippets, right? So audio snippets will have some length, and the text snippet will have some length. How do we map these audio lengths to this text snippet? So that is our challenge, right? So how do we do it? We do it with each audio. What is the letter that is being predicted? So that we need to be finding, and from that we can be finding the actual word. But one of the problems here is, let's take for example, there is h, we can just convert into the actual output h. But if there is something like LLL, we need to actually find that there is 2L that is being present, but that won't be found with this approach. So we use this special token called epsilon, so that we can actually find what is this actual sense word.
Okay, so mapping from speech to text transcription.
Yeah,
So because H will be discovered many times.
yeah.
So, but it's a
every
duplicate. It should end up in one H, not
uh,
multiple H's. Okay.
yeah. So
But for L, you do need two L's. You
uh,
can't just say one L only. Okay.
yeah. So that is the CTC concept. So fine tuning. So what happens is that when we have this architecture, we will be having a hours and hours of data. We will be training it and fine tuning it. So once we have this trained model, uh, we need to be fine tuning for our speech recognition. So what we do is we add a randomly initialized linear prediction on top of the context network, so into C classes. So what happens is, let's take for example, we have this model that is being learned. So we just need to add one more layer to understand what is what is each representation is mapped to a single alphabet. So that's why the fine tune it to get for each of these context network representations from these C classes, which class it belongs to. For the Libri speech, they use 29 tokens, and for this 29 tokens include the characters in the English language and the word boundary. So that's how they fine tune. So the basic idea here in the Wave to Wake 2.0 is to use a lot of unlabeled data, hours and hours of unlabeled data, and with just after training completely the model with just some fraction of that untrained unlabeled data, a labeled data is being taken, and that is being used for fine tuning. And once you use that for fine tuning, you will be able to automatically guess which words comes for which audio sequences. That's how the fine tuning works. Another important thing in the fine tuning is, so the audio that is being used for the training should have the same sampling rate as the audio that is being used for the inference. So let's take for example, the sampling rate is the number of samples taken per second in the audio, and that has to match. So here in this particular Wave to Wake 2, they have used 16 kilohertz as a sampling rate, and they have trained it on Libri speech and LibriVox. So what we need to be doing is, the data set that we have for which we need the inference, we need to resample that audio into the sampling rate of what they have trained to use it for the fine tuning and inference purposes. So that's how the fine tuning works. So here how it has been trained is what they have described. So Wave2Vec 2.0. So what they did is they trained it around 960 hours of unlabeled speech examples. So this 960 hours of unlabeled speech is taken from the public domain audiobooks. And LibriSpeech, what it is it's 1000 hours of 16 kilohertz read English speech. So for this LibriSpeech, we have complete audio and its text files. The data is having the audiobooks read from this LibriVox project and carefully segmented. So once we train it, the Wave2Vec 2.0 on 960 hours of unlabeled data, we fine tune with different amounts of annotated data. There is 100 hours of annotated data that is done. So there are 3 cases that is fine tuned on 100 hours, 1 hour, and just 10 minutes of annotated data. So once we have this different types of fine tuning done, we try to find what is the word error rate. So in the speech recognition systems, we use 2 types of error rates. One is the word error rate, and the second is phenome error rate. So phenome error rate, we calculate the number of phenomes that we got wrong. In the word error rate, what is the number of words that we got wrong to the actual target. So that is the one of the metric that is being used. So here we are using a word error rate. So this is a very common metric in finding the performance of the speech recognition, and it helps in knowing the performance of the model. So this word error rate, it takes into account the substitution. So for a word, if there is any other word that is being directed, so that is the substitution. The deletion is like some words would have been left out and some words would have been extra. So that is insertion. So based on the substitution, deletion, and insertion, we find the word error rate, and we compare with the previous models to this model to find how much our model is working. So here in this graph, we will be able to know how our method is working. So here in the previous data, what they use is they use the 100 hours of annotated data. So there is 100 hours of annotated data. So here, if you see in this particular example, in this Wave2Vec 10 minutes, we have okay. So we have Wave2Vec in different things. So this thing is very comparable to this thing. So what is the difference between these 2 things is, in previous case, they have this 100 hours of labeled data with which they were able to achieve this 8.6 accuracy metric. Here, in this particular case, what they do is they use 53,000 annotated data. They don't have any labeled data, but they have 53,000 data in which they trained it, and just with 10 minutes of labeled data, they were able to achieve the same word error rate of 8.6. That is the thing. Another thing is here with 860 hours. So this is like 860 hours of not labeled data with 10 minutes of labeled data. With this, they are achieving 10.8 word error rate. This is like that 860 hours unlabeled with 1 hour. With 1 hour alone, they are significantly reducing the word error rate. And with 100 hours, in this space, they have significantly reduced the word error rate from 8.6 to 5. So these are some of the observations of why this is useful, because with very less labeled data, they are able to achieve on-par performance with other previous state-of-the-art audio models. The next concept is XLSR. So this is a cross-lingual training. So what happens is, for some language, even the unannotated data is limited. So even the audio files that we have is very limited for some languages. So what they did is they explore the idea of cross-lingual training. So how they would do is they will train let's take for example 10 languages simultaneously in one particular model, and speed trained a single model on multiple languages at the same time, which gives better results. So they have this particular model called XLSR Wave to Wake 2. So this is able to learn speech representations that is useful across multiple languages. So we find that some units are used only for a particular language, while others are used in similar languages, or even that is not similar. So once they have multiple languages combined and trained on a single model, they are able to find that if the speech units are very similar, we will be able to get better results. So let's take for example the southern languages like Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada. So they would have very similar speech representation. So training all those languages with a single model could benefit learning the speech representation quickly. That would in turn will reduce the word error rate. So that's what is shown here. So here, if you see here, so this XLSR mono is like a single language, and if this is a 10 languages being trained on a single model. So with low resource, with high resource languages, there is no significant word error rate change here. So if you see, there are some languages which is very complex and which is very different from other languages. So combining that with other languages doesn't yield much good results. But when you have very similar languages, like as I said, like the southern languages of India or the European languages, so those are low resource languages and are very similar. So that could benefit from training on the single model, all those languages. And here, if you see, if you train a single language, a low resource language, it had a error rate of 34.1 in this particular case. But when combined with 10 languages, the word error rate has significantly dropped to 12.9. That's why cross-link language training helps in case of XLSR. So here, the speech units that they have trained, so they try to finding a 2D representation, which speech units are very similar. So they find that. So here, if you see this English, German, French, the speech units learned here are very similar. The Chinese has a very different structure, so their speech units are very far away. Here we have this Italian, Catalan, Spanish. So these things are very similar, and again, these things are very far away from languages like Kabyle or Arabic. So that's how we know that our cross-language language training is working when the languages are very similar. So on a conclusion part, so this wave to wake, so this is an algorithm that is very useful when we have this raw unlabeled data, and with this raw unlabeled data, we try to train the automatic speech recognition. So why there is a version 2.0 is we need to be learning speech units from continuous signals, and we need to use very less annotated data and very less computational resources. So when we need very less annotated data, only have very less annotated and very less low computation resources, the 2.0 has a significant advantage because it learns the speech units too, which in turn makes the model better. And there's an extension of this wave to wake, which is named as XLSR. So that can learn the speech units from several languages, and this in turn can improve the performance dramatically, specifically in the low resource languages. So this model could have a practical applications in many languages and dialects and domains where there is very less transcribed audio data, so that we can be using very less annotated data to have a good model that achieves on-par accuracy with other state-of-the-art models. So that is about the way to it. I will also show the code demo too. So here, what happens is we have this transformer model. Uh, so here, the wave to wave model uh, has been done by Facebook actually, and the Hugging Face they too have a repository that they have created for Wave to Wave. So I have used that Hugging Face repository to create the model. So I am first installing transformers and what are the other sound libraries that I need like Librosa. So that I am importing and Torch and transfer from transformers. I'm using this two things, uh, Wave to Wave. So this C2C and tokenizer. So the model is this thing. So the model is I'm getting from the pre-trained Facebook model, and the tokenizer I'm again getting from the Facebook. So once I do it, I send my file that I need to be finding the answers first. So here, what I was saying was three actions. So from three different countries like America, Europe, and Australia. So how they use the action and whether our model is able to find all those actions very clearly. So I'll just show that in the last. So once we have that audio that we have, we need to be resampling. So as I told, what is the training data in that? What is the sampling rate? The same sampling rate should be in our inference data. So my audio file I resampled to 16,000. So once I resampled it, I send that feature here and tokenizer. So the input values I have told and the logics. So I get the inference part, and from that inference part I get the transcription. So I print the transcription. So here, if you see what is the speech audios, different words that is being printed. So I'll just play the audio.
Banana,
Banana. Banana.
tomato,
Tomato. Tomato.
water,
Water. Water.
coffee,
Coffee. Coffee.
dog,
Dog. Dog.
shark,
Shark. Shark.
zebra,
Zebra. Zebra.
So as you can see, when the accents are very different, it has some issues. Like for example, this tomato, it finds very different transcriptions. But when it's very similar, the accents are it's able to find the things commonly. So that's how it is. From audio to the transcribed text, we will be able to find with the help of this wave-to-wave model.
So this is one way, right? Speech to text.
Yeah.
So it doesn't do text to speech yet, right? So
Yes, yes. It's an audio speech recognition system. It can't do that.
what was that thing Indrajit presented? Tachotron? I forgot the name. Tachotron.
Yeah, I think.
It was also TTS, text to speech. That was text to speech actually. It was text to speech. Okay.
Here the main idea is like they have been using this transformer model in the NLP and the computer vision space. How do they extend to the audio space? Is what is
Tachotron. That was text to speech. This is speech to text.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, interesting. So you are only doing inference in this code demo, no training, right?
No, training. Straight inference.
But how generalized this model is can be used for variety of English speech recognition.
Yeah, English speech recognition we can be using directly. For others, yeah, it's like the same transformers thing. We
But
can't
it
be.
may be, foreign accents of English, right? Like American or those, or maybe European accents, because English accent it will not pick up possibly.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I showed here. Like, if you see this accents, there's three different accents, and it's not able to that will for some words not able to pick up that correctly, but in other words, it's able to pick up. So, generally, its words error rate is very low compared to the previous state of the art models.
So we can apply this algo for cross-lingual speech recognition, huh?
Yes,
So
yeah, yeah.
you can train
Cross-lingual.
it. What do you mean by cross-lingual? Like I can do it on French speech, huh? French speech to French text.
Yes, yes. So
That's
the
how it is.
cross-lingual, how it works is like, let's take for example, the French alone we can train the whole model on and do this inference. The cross-lingual, how it works is what is the very similar languages to French. So the European languages, all things will be very similar to French, right? So there'll be German, there'll be French, English. So all those languages that is very close to this French, all is being trained on the same model. So once we train it on the same model, it helps in understanding the speech units that is uh, similar in all these languages, and this in turn increases the accuracy. So the word error rate goes down. So that is the extension of this wave-to-wake, which is XLSR model.
So what do we? I didn't understand. What do we mean by cross-lingual? So we can train this model on multiple European languages simultaneously. Is that what we are saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And then for inference, will you have to just do French to French, or you can do French to German or something?
No, no, French to French only.
Okay, French to
Oh,
French.
yeah.
Okay.
So the thing is like here, as I have shown here, uh, so this is the mono. So the mono, what happens is if you train it on a single model, it's achieving a word error rate of 34.1. So in
Hmm.
this XLSR 10, you combine 10 languages, 10 European languages, and train it on that. So here, what happens is because of this speech units that is very similar, it is getting advantage of using those speech units, and there's a significant reduction. So if you use this XLSR 10 for your speech recognition system, you only get a word error rate of 12.9. So that's what this cross-lingual is.
So the low resource languages, easier languages, huh?
Ah, yes, yes. There is
Okay.
a very, yeah, a very less alphabets, the words that
Hmm.
we use in the language, and very
Hmm.
similar. In this 10, the languages must be similar.
No, low resource language means ones which has very less data, right? Which you don't have too many, say, online content to train with. If I'm not wrong, that is low resource language, right? You don't have much data to train with.
Uh, I don't think so because this high resource languages, it's having a
So resource here is data, I'm assuming. I mean, that's what I kind of
No,
seen.
yeah, there's this slide. So Chinese is very complex that we know. Go to next slide.
yeah.
Yeah, in this slide, so Chinese is complex. We know that. So Chinese is high resource, not because of amount of data. I am thinking, Manor, because of complexity of the language, probably. Not sure.
Okay. And typically, when they talk about low resource and high resource, like language in whenever language translation, I mean, I think kind of recall that it is basically having more data and less data. Some languages, have very less data. If you go to Nepali or something like that, there's very less data to train with, but Nepali will be like will get some advantage if you start training using maybe Hindi or some of the
No,
North.
but in this paper they are saying Chinese is hard to train, but Chinese has huge amount of data.
Okay.
If it was about data availability per se,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, but the XLSR, yeah, the idea is this thing. So you get the speech units once you train it on multiple languages, the speech units from one language can help these speech units from another.
So I guess that will also work because typically when we are speaking, locally when you're speaking, right, we'll
Yeah.
mix up languages. I'm
Ah.
assuming that will also be picked.
Yeah.
Uh, like when we're speaking English, Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, like South India, for example, right? We might be mixing up languages when we are speaking very casually with someone, right? So I'm assuming that will also be addressed here.
Yeah. So as I said, like southern languages, if you train in a single thing, it could benefit than training on a single language. Because the speech units would be very similar, that could pick up and in turn would make the word error rate.
Okay. The other thing that you were showing, that errors that we see, water, vado, basically,
Yeah.
those I guess would get like benefited from using the language also as a prior, right? In the sense, we know vado may not be like like basically if you use it in terms, use the context in which it's being used.
If we bring the NLP2, probably it will know that there is no word like this. What is the close word?
Correct. Context also,
Yeah.
like in the context, right?
Yeah.
Maybe vado is a valid word, but in the context it may not be valid.
Yes. So
Right.
here we
Shark.
are,
Like
using
shark.
purely audio.
Yeah. So that I think I mean there are I think there are already schemes that does that. Basically using
Yes.
the language as a prior to the model. I think it'll be challenging if you have a mixing of languages. Then it's may not be straightforward because now your vocabulary may be big and it may not be so easy to distinguish the context also. Like if I mixing say Hindi English in between, right?
Yeah.
It has to like quickly know the context, go switch back to Hindi English. That may be challenging. But if you're speaking one language, it may not be that difficult.
Yes. There probably we need to bring the NLP2. Otherwise, we won't be knowing.
Okay. Do they jointly learn it? Like I'm just like learning of say the correcting this. There is like spell correction, spell check, right? Just like it should be done automatically, like on the fly. Change this. Do they? I'm guessing. Is it possible to learn them jointly, or like you have to you feed this into another independent thing and check whether it is relevant or not? I mean,
We can do it jointly. Like, what are the words that is perpetrated? Based on that, again, okay, yeah, we need to check with the what is the vocabulary we have available and what is the correct words. If it's not, we need to send that as a loss, probably, so that it picks up the correct actual words.
are you aware of any like joint schemes that are there? Like, you come
No,
up with-
in this particular thing, yeah. No.
Okay, so nice session, Gautaman.
Yeah.
Thanks for this presentation. So we'll plan more with you.
Yeah.
So any final comments, team? Okay, thank you for joining.